Joan of Arc. The name alone is enough to summon visions of medieval glory, battle cries, and an angelic young woman who led armies into battle and became a symbol of France's national pride. Saint Joan, the Maid of Orleans. But before you go placing that halo firmly above her head, let's take a step back and consider that the truth about Joan might not be as saintly as history has painted her. Joan was born in 1412, and by the time she was in her teens, she was telling people, with absolute certainty, that she was receiving visions from saints telling her to save France from the English. Now, as impressive as that sounds, let's pause for a moment. A teenager claiming to hear voices from saints? You might want to get that checked out. Look, no one's saying Joan wasn't a determined young woman with a cause, but historians are a little divided on whether those visions were divine intervention, or, possibly a sign of something else, like stress, isolation, or maybe a bit of medieval mysticism. She was a teenager, after all. And let's be real, most teens are already hearing voices, usually their parents asking, "Did you clean your room?" Now let's talk about that saving France thing. Joan managed to convince the French Dauphin, who, to be fair, was probably desperate for anything at that point, that she could turn the tide of the 100 Years' War. So, armed with nothing but sheer conviction and a really questionable haircut, she led an army to lift the siege of Orleans in 1429. And surprise, she actually did it. All right, Joan, that's impressive. She was courageous, no doubt. But here's where it gets complicated. Joan didn't just lead armies into battle, she also led them straight into danger. Under her leadership, French forces won significant victories, sure, but there were also some questionable tactics. She wasn't exactly a strategist. She was more of a, let's just charge and hope for the best kind of leader, which in the middle of war isn't exactly the safest bet. And let's not forget her capture. After her big moment at Orleans, Joan was captured by the Burgundians, handed over to the English, and tried for a variety of charges, including witchcraft and heresy. And here's where things get really interesting. The English weren't exactly asking Joan to join their team. They were out for blood. Joan's trial was less of a fair trial and more of a medieval version of how to destroy your enemies with words, not swords. During the trial, Joan was asked if she had received her visions from saints, and when she said yes, she was pressured into admitting that they might have been from demons instead. Think about it, a young woman completely alone, under immense pressure. Not exactly the most balanced environment for a fair confession, huh? So she was sentenced to death, burned at the stake in 1431, just 19 years old. And here's where the twist comes in. 25 years later, after the political winds had shifted, Joan was posthumously exonerated, and the Catholic Church declared her a martyr. And later, a saint. A bit too late, don't you think? Now here's the kicker. Even though Joan is celebrated as a symbol of bravery, virtue, and divine intervention, some of her actions weren't exactly saintly by today's standards. For one, her devotion to religious purity led to her vehement opposition to the idea of women holding power. So this feminist icon wasn't exactly open to the idea of women leading unless it was her leading. Talk about a double standard. And while we're on the subject of purity, let's talk about her obsession with personal purity. Joan refused to bathe, refused to wear women's clothing, and even demanded that her soldiers do the same. But don't mistake this for some sort of holier-than-thou attitude. It was actually a strategic move, one that tied into her belief that she was divinely ordained and that anything less than complete obedience would betray her mission. Joan's legacy is complicated. There's no denying her courage, her incredible impact, and her ability to inspire a nation. But as with any historical figure, there's more to her story than the shiny, idealized version we've been handed. Was she a saint? Maybe. Was she a political pawn? Definitely. Was she a military strategist? Not so much. So, the next time you hear Joan of Arc's name, maybe take a moment to reflect on the whole picture. Visionary, martyr, saint, and military leader, but also someone who was caught up in a very messy time with a very complicated set of motivations. Because as inspiring as her story is, it's important to remember that not every legend is as clear-cut as the myths we've been told. Thanks for watching. If you want more untold stories and deeper dives into history's legends, hit that subscribe button. Or, maybe just go grab a book on medieval history. That works too.